Well, thank you, worship team, for kicking us off that way. What an awesome beginning to our morning. Well, again, good morning and welcome to Cedarbrook. It is great to have all of you here. If you walked in during that first worship set, we are celebrating 20 years in ministry here this morning. 2 full decades. That's really an absolutely incredible feat. And it's really exciting to be able to do that. And so as we were getting ready for this, way back in November, as we looked at this date and thought, 20 years of ministry, 2 decades of ministry, we decided that it might be fun to reminisce a little bit and think back to what Cedarbrook was like in January of 2003. What would Cedarbrook have been like? And I thought there's no better way to help paint that picture than to bring back our former pastor, our founding pastor, and one of my best friends, Pastor Remy. So Remy, would you come and join us this morning? Is it a little bit like old times having the worship band back together and seeing some of those?
Yes, it's emotional. Actually, all those songs are kind of embedded in my brain, so yeah.
It kind of is amazing, like even to hear the worship that we planned the beginning of our worship set to be some of the songs that would have been sung at the very beginning of the church, and cool to see them do that, so. Yeah, so January 2003 was kind of the first official Cedarbrook service, but it began before that. It began not just in January of 2003, but really it began as kind of a passion in your heart. What kind of prompted you to get this thing started?
Well, probably started 20 years before that in my brain. I'd always wanted to start a church, and for various reasons it didn't work out. And I grew up in a church denomination that was really boring, and I didn't like church, and so our family quit going to church early on. And then I met someone who I dated just briefly, but she was a Christian and alive, talked about Jesus all the time. I had no idea what she was talking about. But she invited me to her church, and it was just alive. It was a new church. It was a church plant, but it had a lot of people. People would come 20 minutes early just to get a seat up front, and it would fill from the front to the back. And they had a band.
Kind of a lot like this,
yeah,
right?
like this.
Yeah.
And they had this is back in the 70s. I'm really dating myself, but they had drums. They had a band. They played camp songs. They weren't. It wasn't music like this, but they had a full band, which was new. And the pastor preached in a way that I understood, and it helped me, and it changed my life. And it spoiled me, because after that, I could never find a church like that. And when I moved to Menominee, I didn't see a church like that, and I wanted to be a part of it. So that's really what was in the back of my. I always was looking for an opportunity to start a church like that, and when I got to Menominee, that happened.
Yeah, I love when you say church was boring. I mean, many of us can relate to that. Actually, the very first postcard we sent out, can we throw up that very first advertising or mailing that we had? Maybe this was kind of your view of church.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that photo actually when I was interviewing for the job, and I Google searched Cedarbrook Church, and this was one of the first things that came up, and it's like, yeah, I can identify.
Yeah, that was the son of our Gail Markham. So she was our first church secretary.
Yeah. So then tell us about kind of those very first preview services, and you guys started actually on Saturday nights, not Sunday mornings.
Yeah, we cheated a little bit, and I think that's one of the reasons we were more successful than a lot of church plants, is that the band and how we did church got started out of the Alliance Church. So I was on staff at the Alliance Church, and I was pressuring them to start another church, and they didn't necessarily think that was a good idea to have 2 churches in the same town. So I said, well, can we at least have a separate service, off campus? And so we did that above the Acoustic Cafe. That's the old Masonic Lodge, and there's a big hall up there. So we did that, and we had 200 people come out. And same guitarist that was up here this morning, Greg Wold, is in that picture up there. So that's one of the long-time commitment to this church from people, and you see it on the stage, and you see it out here in the audience, is just another reason for the success of this church. Is just amazing. So anyways, we did that Saturday night alternative. It kind of dwindled over time because it was, no one really knew what to do with it. It wasn't a church. We didn't have children's ministry and stuff like that. So it dwindled, and then the Alliance still didn't want to start a church. So I said, is it okay if I start a church with someone else? In Valley Brook Church at the time, I was good friends with the pastor there. So they said, we'd love to sponsor you. So they helped get us started, and that's how we came about.
Yeah, were any of you here in those very early Saturday night alternative days downtown Menominee? Look at that, a couple of hands going up. How cool is that? People still around. They trusted you that much that they stuck around for 20 plus years.
It's crazy.
All right, so then that didn't stick, and kind of whether it was no kids ministry or it's not on Sunday morning, I can't picture my kids getting married in the upstairs of a coffee shop, whatever those excuses were that pushed people away, then you decided to get started in a movie theater.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, we decided to start, and just when we decided to start, the Cinemagic Theater opened up. And it was perfect. I called them, and they were looking for income, and so we paid them $300 a week, no, a month.
Either way, it's almost
cheap.
Nothing.
It was cheap. I can't remember. It was probably $300 a week.
If
But
they
anyway,
want $300 a month, we're going back.
Yeah,
and we'll
really.
rent this building out.
Yeah, it was cheap, though. It was something we could afford. And that was great. And the thing I liked about it, even you can see in that picture a little bit, and as you drive by still today, is just it was colorful. The lobby was colorful. And to walk into church and have a multicolored, crazy, kind of futuristic lobby was really fun. And I always said the lobby was a part, and still is today. Lobby's part of the church service because there's a lot of community going on out in that lobby.
And so what were some of the things that drew people to a movie theater for church? Because that's kind of a stretch in my mind. I wasn't a part of Cedarbrook when they were there, but what were the calling cards of ministry?
Great preaching. It was
yeah.
Right. No, honestly, as you could see this morning, it was the band. I mean, just purely, the band was so unique to have not only a band, but to have a band of this quality and playing contemporary music. It really, here's the band. They did an album, and that got their name out there, and Todd Sins was giving away CDs all to everybody. So the band is what drew a lot of people.
So you can see in that picture, I see Todd and Greg, who are up here today, Andre and Jane and Steve, who are all up here today. Pretty cool that there's still a relationship.
Yeah, the two young ladies below are Jane's daughters, and they were a key part of the three-part harmony of those three ladies was pretty amazing. Probably still is. Yeah, so the only people, we lost track of Randy up there on the right, but I don't. Everyone else is accounted for.
Yeah, and so the music has always been a huge part of Cedarbrook. For those of you who were here on Christmas Eve or have seen the news, our band continues to be a huge part of who we are. They just released their first ever original worship song on Christmas Eve, and the ministry that happens through that music is absolutely incredible. But the movie theater presented some obstacles too. And you didn't stay there for forever. So what happened? What pushed you out of the movie theater?
Well, we saw that a lot of people came, but families with young children came and left because it just wasn't a good environment for children. And the nursery, I'll never forget, because we had the nursery out in the hallway of the theater, and when you'd pick up your kids, they'd be cold and they'd be dirty from crawling around on the dirty theater floor. So that parents made that decision really quick.
And Lisa said, we're done with this.
Yeah, really. Well, at the same time, that's what the band released their CD album. I don't know if this was the picture was from the first or second, but anyways, they released their CD, and we held the mall, now called Shops Off, I don't know what it's called now, Shops Off Broadway. It used to be called the Thunderbird Mall. It was just a wreck. The parking lot was a wreck. But they, at that time, coincidentally...
They were cheap, too?
Yes. No, they were not cheap. They went way up. But at that time, they renovated the whole place, and so we had the CD album released there. And when we had the CD, and 600 people came out to that concert, and it was like, oh, this could work as a place to hold church. So we rented a shop there, used to be Ben Franklin, I think, and turned that into basically children's ministry, and then we met as a church in the banquet center.
And this Extreme Mall Makeover, or Extreme Makeover Mall Edition, you remember that TV show, so I'm sure we played off of their marketing. But that was one of the first, major service projects. We're going to talk about service a bunch after the band plays a little bit more, but volunteering has always been a huge calling card.
This guy up on the right, he's got dark hair there. I don't think he does anymore, but I think that's Mark Lewis, and Mark also was in charge of building this whole building.
Yeah, and there's a few other people I saw in those building pictures, some former staff members, and some of you guys who are in here were in a lot of those building pictures in those early days. And so we were in the mall again for about 3 years.
3 years? Yeah, 3 years in the theater, 3 years in the mall, and then in between there, we bought this land, just in case someday we might want to build. And Don Retzigo was... He's down in Florida now, but he was huge in making that purchase. And there's Don right there, and good-looking young guy there. I don't know who that is, but
dark hair, lots
I know.
of it.
And that's the aerial view of where we're sitting right now. So that was kind of fun. But anyways, yeah. So we bought the land, and then it just sat there for a few years, and then we decided, it's kind of make or break. Either we buy or we stay in the mall forever. So we had to raise $800,000 to get a start on this building. And I'm like...
and it was 2008.
Yeah.
And for those of you who track those numbers, 2008 was like the housing crash and the market crash. And it was not a good time to raise $800,000 for a church meeting in a mall.
It was like the month we decided to do the building, the market crashed. And we had to have a meeting and decide, are we going to go ahead with this or not? And we thought, well, what the heck? What do we got to lose? If people don't give, we won't build. If they give, we will. So we had to raise $800,000 just to make it possible, and we raised $1.4 million. Yeah.
Just incredible.
So that just shows the passion that was here. I mean, I wrote Kyle in an email that the first part, pre-building, there was such a strong passion among the people here to do something new and like, wow, this is new and it's really happening, and I get to be a part of it. So it was great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm going to invite the band back out. They're going to play a couple of more songs. That's kind of part one, our pre-Cedarbrook building memory section. But it really is pretty incredible to me to see just how foundational God has been and tracking with what He's been doing in our lives from the very, very beginning. So hopefully you enjoyed that little history lesson or that trip down memory lane. And now the band is going to actually play some songs that I think were played in the mall, played in those early days. So why don't you stand up and join our band? How fun is it to reminisce like that? And even, it's amazing how those songs stick with you. I don't think I've heard that song since youth group circa 2004. Maybe 2008, I don't know, but it was a fun memory. So we were in the mall, and at that time, I believe, correct me, I might be wrong here, you were the only full-time staff member. We had maybe a couple of part-time staff members with you. But then we made a pretty big transition in raising $1.4 million, going through a building campaign, and moving out here to this land. Yet that foundation never shifted. Maybe some of you identify with this as much as I do, but one of the things that Cedarbrook had always been about, and has always been about, and will always continue to have as that push behind us, that wind in the sail, is this phrase that I don't know who came up with it, but says, we want to be a church for people who have given up on church, but not on God. And I remember the very first conversation I had with Remy. Actually, I had seen that on the website, and I asked him about that. And he just lit up over the idea of being a church for people who have given up on church but not on God. So where did that come from, and what did that mean to you? Why did we use it?
Can I put a pin in that? I just want to back up because there was a pretty significant full-time employee, and that was Carla Halverson.
She's going to be here at the next
Is
service.
she?
Yeah. Unless she's here now. Carla, are you? No, she emailed me she's coming today.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure because we were taking in a lot of money, and she was working part-time, and then she went to full-time, and she came it was such an important time for her to be full-time because she really drove the whole campaign in many ways, financially. So just FYI on that one.
I'm going to get that right. Second service. Tune in for that one. Yeah.
And
No, and I
while I'm
knew-
saying that, let me
Yeah.
add, because our administrators have been awesome. So it was Carla, followed by Stephanie. I saw Stephanie out here, and Demir's, and did I say that right? Demars, I'm sorry. It's been a while. And now Jody.
Yeah.
So incredible. You've got great staff here and great leadership. We always have, and that's, again, you asked earlier what made the church successful. Great band, great leadership. So I've just been along for the ride. It's been nice.
Yeah, for sure. The staff it's always been an incredible staff. We've been blessed.
And our
to
elders.
have-
And
yeah.
Jim Walker has been heading up the lead team from the beginning. So just amazing group of people. Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, let's
Take
pull the pin out. All right, yeah,
What
good.
was the question?
What was the question?
Giving up on church, non-God. Yes, I heard that someplace in probably some church planter thing, and I thought, that really sums it up well, because that's what we're trying to reach. We're all these people, myself included, that have given up on church at some point. We haven't given up on God. Why would we want to do that? But church just often drops the ball, still does today, and I'm sure Cedarbrook drops the ball at times. But we wanted to dedicate ourselves to being just super relevant, and that people could walk in no matter what your background was, and you'd go, okay, I can do this. This works. I mean, I've had so many people tell me, even family members go, Remy, I would go to your church. I can't go to any other church, but when I go to Cedarbrook, it just feels right.
So getting in the building, that heart for people who have given up on church and not given up on God, people who we wanted to reach with the gospel, continued to be a passion. In those early days here at Cedarbrook, our staff, or in this building, our staff really grew then quite quickly. We went from those 2 full-time people with a couple of part-time people, and over the next couple of years, added staff. What was adding staff like for you?
Necessary. I mean, it was just growing so much. And again, in the email I wrote to Kyle, I said that first season was just all sizzle. I mean, it's a lot of excitement, but we didn't have a lot of infrastructure. And so when we moved into this building, we needed to have some infrastructure. And that's when Kyle, the idea of, I think we might need another pastor with a good head on his or her shoulders to come alongside this thing. So I contacted our denomination, Evangelical Covenant Church, and I said, you got to give me the best youth pastor out there, because I want this person to not only be a youth pastor, but I want them to hopefully mature into other roles. And I got nothing. and then
that was me.
Yeah, that was him.
Got absolutely nothing.
That was perfect. All right.
We didn't rehearse that, but it worked out so good.
2 months later, I got a call from this guy, and he was up in International Falls, of all places, and my wife and I have a family cabin up in Brainerd, Minnesota, so I said, let's meet halfway, which is still like 2 hours each for both of us to get halfway. And so we met up in Bemidji at a restaurant up there, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, and Remy dug up this photo of me from that time, and so...
Yeah.
Look at that.
Look at those kids.
If you know which kid is which, you're going to be super impressed, man.
Yeah. And I think Anna may have been pregnant at that time, or shortly after. Yeah.
Yep. So when we moved here, it had just the 3 boys, and then Jake's our only true Wisconsinite, so he was born once we got here.
So if I can brag on Kyle a little bit, what a gift. I mean, to think that we were in such a need, and I mean, what's the likelihood of hiring a youth pastor when you were 29, right?
Yeah.
29, and then he just keeps expanding and filling the void, and then I leave, and you guys are doing as good, if not better, than you've ever done. That's crazy. I'm so proud.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It was fun in those early days in the building. I'm thankful I came after all those renovations and build projects and
really.
get there and run chords early and all of those things. It was a blessing for me for sure.
We could have used you to move stuff.
Yeah, probably.
Your strength.
And so we grew in numbers and we grew in impact. I mean, from seeing people baptized on a regular basis and people making decisions for Christ, and continue to see God's faithfulness to us financially. But in those middle term years, as we were developing the ministry and growing the staff and seeing people come, really, I think there were two things that stood out to me in that era of calling cards of Cedarbrook, things that became our heartbeat. The first one was generosity, and the second one was service. And those two things permeated everything we did. From that first building campaign where we needed to raise some money in the heart of a recession to build this ministry center that we get to call home now, to Advent Conspiracy kicking off. We were doing some calculating earlier this week. I don't have a final total. I'll get this for our annual meeting. But did you know Advent Conspiracy, in the 15 years, we have given away more than $500,000 in ministry? Like, that's insane. Churches don't give away, nonprofits giving away $500,000. I mean, it doesn't happen. And then volunteering and mission work. And so talk to us a little bit about what started that mission work, because that was kind of just launching as the building launched.
Well, actually, it was just before a little bit, because that's when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. And I can remember we were about 2 years into our church, and I was praying, and I thought, God, I'm really happy that we're doing this Sunday thing, and it's exciting, and lots of people are coming to it and stuff, but it's really just another flavor of church on Sunday. We're not doing anything different other than it sounds different. What are we missing? And I felt the thing we were really missing was a whole service component, that Jesus came to seek and to save and to serve. And I felt that we needed to become a church of service, and I thought, well, maybe I need to lead the way in that. And so I led a team down to Katrina, to New Orleans, to help with houses down in Katrina. And I came back and told the story, and it was like, I've described it as throwing a match on a bunch of kindling, because from that point on, the church was just like, yes, we want to do that kind of stuff too. So for years, we sent people down to New Orleans. And then we started, through the Advent Conspiracy, we started building wells, digging wells and building wells, supporting that. And it's just gone from there. And we've gotten a really good name in the community as a result of it.
Yeah, how many of you served on one of those New Orleans mission trip teams? Okay, I knew some hands were going to go up for that one. We sent teams year after year, and actually sometimes 2, 3, 4 teams a year down to New Orleans to work on initially Hurricane Katrina cleanup, and then eventually we just continued to partner with Living Witness Church and Castle Rock Church down there, and doing ministry right in Central City, New Orleans, and that was really just incredible. And that really birthed the mission movement that is here at Cedarbrook. Now we send 4, 5, 6 different mission teams a year all over the world, some stateside and some globally. How many people total have served on one of our mission teams in some way, shape, or form? Yeah, look at all that's like half the people in the
amazing.
room. That's incredible, and that truly has been one of those things that's been a calling card of Cedarbrook. One of those things that we thank God for, that impact in so many ways.
Kyle, you've been huge on that. I just have to give you credit for your Mission Possible weekends that you've done over the last 3, 4 years, whatever they are. I've told this story before, but when he first came into my office and told me he had this great idea, I thought he was nuts. I said, go ahead, knock yourself out. You can try. I don't think you're going to raise, what you wanted to raise, $50,000?
$50,000. We wanted to cancel all fundraisers. You hopefully noticed that our lobby almost never has a fundraiser because I was annoyed by leaving church and every Sunday was another bake sale, another ministry, another kids mission trip, another thing that needed money. And so we were asking for an offering here in the auditorium to support the ministry. And then as you were going out, you were being hit up by another thing. And then probably when you got home, the Boy Scouts were there or Girl Scouts were there. And it just felt like, let's not do that anymore. Let's support our mission trips with one big effort.
And I think the only word of encouragement I gave to you as you walked out the door with my little encouragement, not non-encouragement, I said, well, if anyone can do it, Kyle, you can. And of course he did.
We've done it a few times, and it's
Yeah.
coming again, April. I'm super excited. The last weekend in April, Mission Possible 2020. What year is it? 3. We just changed the calendar, 2023. So I'm super excited about that. But outreach didn't just happen through mission trips, and it didn't just happen by inviting people to things like worship nights here at the church or services, or we did family movie nights and Love and Logic series and all sorts of different things here at the church. But we also had a passion for church planting. Cedarbrook is a church right here in Menominee, but we've helped birth tons of other churches. And so talk to us a little bit about that, because we were a church plant. You wanted to continue to plant churches.
Yeah, so that's been exciting for us that we've been able to do that. We helped a couple in Minneapolis just because they needed it, and we had a big fund at the time. We helped Mike Shea get his church started, branches here in town. And the two that are most recent.
Again, that's crazy. Like a church helping pay for and sponsoring their competitor, right? Another church in Menominee getting started. Churches just don't do that unless you have the vision of there are people in our community who don't know the love of the kingdom yet, who don't know the love of a Savior. And so we just wanted to do anything we could to help people get connected to a relationship with Jesus, whether that was here or across the street at another church in Menominee or around the world.
Yeah, the two that I'm super excited about is Jamie Staples in Eau Claire, Renew, and of course Stan Carlson, who used to be on staff here with us, and he went to Hudson a few years back and started a church, and those two churches are rocking. And it feels like Cedarbrook. They all have the same feel, those 3 churches, so that's great.
Yeah, so we've done a few different church plants that we had. We gave some, like Remy said, we gave some money to some in the Twin Cities. We did some more hands-on stuff with helping Renew and Midcurrent get started, sending some people there, helping them not only financially. We have some help in a church plant in Mexico City, which is another cool partnership that we get to be with. And then this new thing you hear every Sunday. Maybe you've missed some of the news and you hear me say, welcome to our friends at Prairie Lake every Sunday morning, and you wonder, what the heck is that about? Where is Prairie Lake? Well, Prairie Lake is in Chautauqua, Wisconsin, and early last summer, I got a phone call from their church chairman telling me that their pastor was retiring and they couldn't hire a new pastor, and so they were wondering what Cedarbrook might be able to do to help them. And in all of my wisdom, I was blunt. I pulled a Remy on them, and I was incredibly blunt. And for those of you who know him, you get it.
Some say that.
Yeah. And so I just told their church chairman, I said, if what you're hoping for is to just not have to close the church doors in the next year, we don't really have time for that. But if you want to be missional and you want to reach your community and help fill those seats back up with people who are coming to meet Jesus or re-engage in their relationship with Jesus, we'll find all the time in the world, and we'd love to partner with you. And he goes, whoa. Yeah, I got to talk to the rest of my group about that. That's a good question. And they called me back the next day. He met with them that afternoon. He called me back the next day, and he said, that's what we want. We want to grow, and we want to see our church full of families worshiping once again. And so at that time, the church had about 25 or 30 people in the summer. And I was just there last weekend welcoming the new year at that site. And they had over 55 people worshiping up in Prairie Lake with us. And so every week, it's incredible. I could go on and on about that church plant, but it is so fun to be up there. They are definitely a little older in age than we are here at Cedarbrook. but they are passionate about continuing to see the mission of the kingdom of God coming into those seats and making God's name be made great in that area. And it's super fun to partner with them. And we're actually in early conversations with some other regional churches that are struggling to see how can we partner with them to continue to help them serve the kingdom in their small communities around us. And so stay tuned. We might be welcoming Prairie Lake and who knows how many others in the near future as we talk about those things. So, well, I want to invite the worship team out one more time. They're going to play a little bit more music for us and that we can worship with. And so I want to invite you guys to stand up and join them as they come. I totally forgot to ask this last question of Remy. So before I get to the final part of our message, I know that some of you have known Remy 20 years or longer. Some of you are brand new to Cedarbrook, but many of you know Remy and know his wife Lisa and their ministry and are probably wondering, what are you up to these days? What are you doing now that you're no longer here at Cedarbrook?
Yeah, just waiting for the phone to ring, you know. No, one of the things, Cedarbrook has been gracious to help fund some of my trips. In fact, in a couple of weeks, Lisa and I are going to go back down to Mexico. I'm going to be speaking. They invited me to speak at a retreat for pastors in Mexico City about spiritual abuse, and I've written a book about that, and so they wanted me to speak on that topic. And then we're going to stay for another 5 weeks down there and teach. The Covenant denomination has a traveling school. It's called Acts 29. It lasts for 3 months, and it's a discipleship school. If people know what YWAM is, it's similar to YWAM. It's the Covenant version of it. And so we're just going to live down there in Mexico City for 5 more weeks and teach there. And it looks like there'll probably be another school next fall and do that. I do a lot of stuff with my books. I just yesterday I released one of my books in Spanish. I'm pretty excited about. So I'm keeping busy. I come here every once in a while. I try to keep Kyle in line. You know, he needs that.
When the staff call and say I'm out of control, they call you in.
That's it.
I think that the point of this morning, what I hope we can all see is that the foundation that has been laid over the first 2 decades here at Cedarbrook is one that we are on a firm foundation. That I, as our new lead pastor, am incredibly grateful to be building upon. That it is truly a blessing to each of us who get to worship here today, to walk in the footsteps of those who have gone before us, blazing a path to continue to share the gospel, to introduce people to Christ, and continue to be a place for people who have given up on church but not on God. You know, as a church, in the last 4 years, since Remy stepped down from being our lead pastor, and especially in the last 3 years, there's been a whole lot going on here as well. And when Remy and I switched roles from him being the lead pastor and me the associate to me being the lead pastor and him being our teaching pastor and then retired, we said that we truly felt like God was telling us the best is yet to come. That what had happened here at Cedarbrook was truly an amazing story of God's incredible faithfulness. That God has always and will always be faithful to us. And then a few short months after Remy retired, COVID came. And I stood here in this building and I sat in an empty auditorium wondering, God, how could this be the best is yet to come? What does that look like? And as we began to move through the pandemic time as a church and see new opportunities like an online service, giving an opportunity to people to be able to worship at home, we would have never been where we are with our online service if it weren't for COVID. And if it weren't for our technology to have an online service, we wouldn't have an impact at Prairie Lake, being able to dial them in and be a part of our community on an ongoing basis. And so we see that the best is yet to come being played out in our midst each and every day. We got through COVID. We began a new online service that gave us an online campus in Chautauqua. As COVID has ended, we're beginning to add staff During COVID, we added one more full-time position. When we moved into the building, just about, let's see, how many years ago was that? Like 13 years ago we moved in here. And now we have 5 full-time people. Soon we'll have our 6th. We're looking forward to adding our new teaching pastor to the mix. We truly believe the best is yet to come. If you haven't heard that news, we are super excited to introduce to you our brand new teaching pastor, Pastor Michael Boehm, and his family will be here at Cedarbrook next Sunday for you to meet him. He'll be on stage preaching our very first message in our new series called I Am, and then he and his wife and 2 boys will be moving here in the middle of February, so we're incredibly pumped to get him on board, and we're looking forward to that. We look forward to continued spiritual growth and physical growth. We continue to look forward to things like planting more churches and partnering with more churches like Prairie Lake. We want to continue to be missional, supporting Mission Possible, Advent Conspiracy, being able to be a giving church and a sending church. We look forward to things like starting a school here at Cedarbrook in the fall of 2023. That's super exciting. And God has continued to be faithful to us. Before I close out, I just have to tell you 2 pretty incredible stories of God's faithfulness that I've seen in just the last 10 days. If you were here with us or reading our newsletter or paying attention throughout the Christmas season, you know that financially, Cedarbrook was a little bit behind as we were coming in to the final days of the year. In fact, on December 20th, with 11 days left in the year, we still needed $144,000 to come in to make our annual operating budget. And our admin, our office manager, Jody, and I kind of sat in the office and were kind of sad. We were trying to look at the numbers and figuring out where we could cut things in the last 10 days so that possibly we could still come out not in the red, come out in the black, and not be a negative number for the year. And amazingly, in the next 10 days, we did a count on the last Friday of the month, and $120,000 came in just those 9 days, and that's amazing. $120,000 came in 9 days to help us get to the place where we could cover all of our expenses for 2022, and we were ecstatic. Like, we were ready to celebrate, but then it didn't stop there. We came in the next Monday morning, or Tuesday, January 2nd, to do our final count of the 2022 year and our first count of the 2023 year, and we were $19,500 short of making our projected income for the year. We've never missed our projected income for the year, and our first person went to the mailbox on Monday morning as they drove in to the office at about 7:30 a.m. and they brought all the mail in, and for some reason somebody went out there at 9:30 to check the mail one more time, and a check for $20,000 on January 2nd. You know, God's faithfulness has been absolutely unbelievable to us. And if finances doesn't prove it to you, how about the federal government believing in God? Catch this one. Yeah, right? So for those of you who have been here at Cedarbrook, you've seen posted over the last few months that our water is contaminated with nitrates. And we can't serve our water, and we have to serve bottled water. And it's costly to serve bottled water, but that's okay, because we have a plan to connect to city sewer and water. Throughout the last couple of months, I've been working on purchasing the acre of land that our driveway drives across, and the farmer generously almost donated it to us so that we can own that land. We're looking at petitioning the city to annex into the city and bring city sewer and water into this building, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of money to annex ourselves into the city and bring city sewer, and water into the building. And so a month ago, I got a notice from the Department of Natural Resources signed by the governor telling us that we are no longer in compliance, and if we serve water in our facility, we could be due a fine of up to $500 a day. And I was terrified, and so I called the DNR, and they said, just wait till your hearing next week. And I got on the phone with them, and they graciously offered us all the way until July 1 of 2023. They gave us 3 months of unfrozen ground to get city sewer and water into our building and figure out how we were going to do that. And I said, it's going to be really tough, guys. But I still believe in the power of miracles, and so I'm going to pray that God would solve our water problem for us. And they laughed at me a little bit, of course, and I said, that's okay. I'm going to pray that God will either clean our water or show us a new way around this. And just this Wednesday, I sat on the phone with them, and I said, well, our water didn't test clean, but I just sent a petition in to the government to give us an added 18 months before we have to do anything. And the lady said, yeah, those never get approved. That was funny. And then she opened her file and she said, this has never happened before. They gave you until July 1 of 2024 to figure out your water problem and continue to serve bottled water. I'm mesmerized by the fact that God can solve problems if we just bring them to him. And so I want to just tell you that God has been faithful to us here at Cedarbrook. Every one of you sitting in these seats is a testimony of God's faithfulness to us here at Cedarbrook. And what I hope that we can see is that we have been blessed by God for 2 full decades. We have seen him transform our lives. We have seen him transform the lives of people that we love and that we care about. We have seen him transform the lives of people who we've never met before. We have seen lives that were ruined become whole. We have seen people who are far from God grow near to God. We have seen people walk through our doors that we never thought we would see worshiping. Folks, we have been built on an incredibly solid foundation. And it's my desire, it's my goal, and it's our leadership team's goal to continue to trust God each and every day to let us live on that foundation. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. As we move into 2023 and as we move into the next 20 years of ministry here at Cedarbrook, may we always be reminded to trust in the Lord in all our ways. And we can continue to see his faithfulness bless us. Will you stand and join us as we close with one more song?